Have you just booked one of your first paying clients? Or do you want to prepare yourself for when you book your first paying client? Well, you have clicked on the right video, brave soul. I am going to give you the very first 4 things that you should do before you pull a stitch of clothing for a client. Keep it locked. Hi Brave Souls, welcome back to Brave Moode Studios, where we give you the most practical steps to help you become a successful fashion stylist and fashion industry creative. Today's video is literally titled, I booked my first client, now what? And that is because I want to help you prepare yourself for when you book your first paying client, or if you've just been asked by someone to style them for their brand or a company that's launching, you want to be prepared for that. If you are new here, make sure you click the subscribe button below to become a part of the Brave Soul family and ring the notification bell to be the first to know when a new video airs. I did my best to pack as much information in this video as possible, but there's just so much that I cannot fit in here. And I'm also talking to a camera. I'm not talking directly to you about your client. So in order to fix that, there is a link in the description box below where you can book one of my Now What mentor sessions. And there's also a promo code YT/NowWhat where you can get 50% off your first session, and we can talk about your first client that's paying you. We'll talk about your stylist rate, your wardrobe budget, everything. Ask me all the questions. I'll help you make a mood board, whatever you need, I got you. So make sure you check that out at the end of this video. Here are the first 4 things that you should do the minute that you are asked to style a client. Now, these techniques can be used for personal styling, celebrity styling, but I am primarily talking about commercial clients. So these are clothing brands, shoe brands, jewelry brands. It could even be a healthcare company. Any company that is hiring you to style a photo shoot for their company or their brand. That's more or less what I'm gearing this towards, but again, this can apply to anyone you're styling. Step number 1, ask the right questions in order to understand your client's expectations and their goals. Step number 2, establish the wardrobe budget. Step number 3, establish the stylist rate. That's a big one. We'll get there in a minute. I know you want to hear about that one. And step number 4 is to create a client-specific mood board. In step number 1, you are basically interviewing your client to make sure you understand the business and their consumers inside out. So asking questions like, how was the company founded? What's the story behind it? What's the purpose of the products? Who are we serving? The demographics of the consumer. You want to make sure that you are super clear on all of those elements, because that's going to directly correlate to how you are servicing your client, and you're ultimately servicing their consumer. When you're styling a shoot for any sort of commercial project, the whole purpose is for it to be customer or consumer facing. That leads me to one of the other questions you want to make sure you're asking, and that is, what is the goal of this shoot? What are we trying to achieve here? Sometimes it's an established brand that's just launching a brand new product. Sometimes it's a brand new brand. They've never launched before. This is their very first launch, and they need obviously the actual product launch, but they're also doing an entire brand launch. So there's a lot more that may go into that versus just highlighting 1 or 2 products. You're really highlighting the story of that brand. And so there's a lot that you definitely want to understand about the goals behind that particular photo shoot. Also, a few tips on helping you get to know your brand a little better is asking for adjectives that describe their consumers. Ask them for 5 to 10 words that describe their ideal consumer. Realistically, they may never hit that exact person, but that's what you're aiming for. Now, you also want to, of course, get an expectation of the date of the shoot. Make sure you understand when they're planning to shoot and when the photos or the video or the commercial is planning to air. All those things you want to make sure you're definitely clear on before you start. You don't want to be kind of aimlessly styling a shoot, not knowing when the shoot is, things like that. All of those concrete elements should absolutely be in place. They should be able to give you a date and at least a tentative location. And they should also be communicating with you should any of those elements change. So just make sure you keep that in mind for sure. Now, step number 2 is establishing the wardrobe budget. This is beyond imperative because, especially you know what a wardrobe budget is if you've been a Brave Soul for a while, but don't worry, I'll reiterate. A wardrobe budget is the actual money, the amount of money that your client is going to give you to pull the clothing for the shoot. While you're talking with your client, and this can be in that preliminary conversation, you want to make sure you identify exactly what the wardrobe budget is. For a couple of reasons. One major reason is that you don't want to overspend. You don't want to overbuy, or maybe they only have in mind a certain budget and you wound up spending a substantial amount over that. You definitely don't want to do that. That can tarnish your relationship with your client. In my experience, larger companies or more established brands who are more accustomed to working with stylists, they usually are very upfront with all the information. They tell you when the shoot's gonna be, what the stylist rate is, what the wardrobe budget is, and there's really not much gray area. It's boom, 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 done, you know. But when you're working with, say, smaller brands, younger companies, they may not be familiar with a wardrobe budget, and they may not know what a realistic wardrobe budget is. So here's a few things to kind of keep in mind. The wardrobe budget should be sufficient for whatever the expectations are. And by expectations, I mean the scale of the shoot. That means how many models there are, how many looks per model there are going to be. If you are styling a shoot that has 2 models and maybe they already have wardrobe and they just need you to pull shoes and accessories, you probably can get away with $500 per model as the budget, being $1,000 total. But if you have a client who's wanting you to style 10 models with 5 different looks each, and they're only giving you $800, mathematically, that doesn't make any sense. And so you want to make sure that if you have a client that tells you, yeah, so I want to do this and this and this, and here's $500 to get all that done. You are the expert, you're the professional, you're the person that they're hiring for the wardrobe. So you are the person that has to tell them, actually, with the budget that you're providing, this is what is realistic. If you don't want to exceed $500, this is what will fit in $500. You want to make sure that you help. Sometimes you have to kind of guide your client depending on, how accustomed they are to working with stylists. Generally speaking, you kind of base it on how many models there are and how many looks are needed, and what type of items you're going to be pulling. And so all of that is wrapped up in there. And then also keeping in mind that some of the items may get damaged, and that's where the wardrobe budget is going to kind of soak that up a bit. So, if there's a pair of shoes that you're not able to return, they got too scuffed up to return, or a buckle broke or something, that's not resellable and you can't return that. And so that's where the wardrobe budget is going to cover that. As the stylist, please note you are never responsible for paying for the wardrobe. That is the client's job. To give you a quick analogy, if I hired you to install a pool in my backyard, I also would not ask you to pay for my pool. I would buy the pool and you would install it. And maybe you would bring the pool, but you would never buy the pool for me and then install it. So that's exactly how it works as a stylist. They are paying you to go and use this budget to purchase the clothing that they need and to fulfill their expectations of that photo shoot. Does that make sense? Comment below if it does or it doesn't. Make sure you ask a question. I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. Step number 3, establish your stylist rate. Now, I know this is a touchy subject, and I get it. When you are first starting out and this is one of your first paying clients, it's hard to know what to ask them for. Like, you don't want to overcharge them because they're like, you ain't been popping that long. You can't really charge me that much. That kind of attitude is in there. And sometimes, you don't feel worthy of asking for a certain amount. But let me assure you of something. I want to free you really quickly, okay? Look, I understand you may not feel that you're worth a certain amount, but you are most definitely worth more than free. Do not ever offer your services for free, especially when you're being asked to be a key stylist on a project. Even if you're being asked by a friend who just launched a brand and of course they want to hire you, you're their friend, they want you to come on to style the shoot. But if they say, hey, like, I'm gonna give you a wardrobe budget, but can you hook me up? Like, no, that's not how business works. They're not gonna expect to sell their clothing for free, so you shouldn't they shouldn't expect you to sell your services for free. Also, there's a lot of work that goes into being a stylist. It is not a super glamorous job. There is a lot of wear and tear on your shoulders, your feet, your time, your gas, your car, the mileage. I mean, there's so much to account for. You should never be handing out your services for free. You're a professional. And so you have to kind of flex that muscle of negotiating your stylist rate and just asking for it, laying it on the table, and stay silent. That's my method. The very first thing you want to think about is reimbursing yourself for the hard costs. So hard costs are things like the gas that you paid for to fill your car up to go to the mall or go to the showroom. This can also be the mileage that you are spending from your home to the store or the showroom. And generally speaking, in the US, each mile is worth about 56 cents. So that's a way that you can put a price on the actual mileage that you're using. Also, something that I like to do is literally time myself while I'm completing a particular task. So if I am in a store pulling, or if I'm creating a mood board, or even the time that I'm spending meeting with a client, I'm gonna time that. And so then I can say, hey, client A, this particular task of me going out and pulling for your brand takes about 8 hours in total, so that way they know what you're talking about, and they can visually attach the value to what you're providing. And then it's a lot easier to negotiate your stylist rate when they realize how much work you're actually putting in. And just a real talk moment for a second, so many people really don't realize what stylists do. And I have even had people tell me on set of a professional photo shoot for a major company, literally tell me, oh, I just thought you played with clothes all day. What? Like, that is the most insulting thing to hear while I'm at work about my job. People don't really realize what we do. So it's really important that you put, timestamps, that you're able to put a value on what you do. You actually show how much time it takes. You actually show the research process, or at least describing that to them so that they understand it. Many people think we're the fairy godmother from Cinderella, and we come with this little magical wand and clothes appear and there's shimmers and little bunnies gather at your feet. It's like a whole thing. That's not what we do. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, generally speaking, when it comes to setting up your stylist rate, you're going to take that hard cost, all of those things that are wrapped up in there, total that up, and then you're going to divide it across 3 days. If you've been a Brave Soul for a while, you probably know what these 3 days are. But again, don't worry, I will reiterate, that is your prep, shoot, and return day. This is really more like 24-hour periods versus one work day. But you're going to take that total and say, okay, I'm going to divide this across 3 days. And that's how you can kind of come up with your stylist rate. If you know that this is going to really come to about $300, you can charge $100 a day. And that is that prep day really includes the time that you're meeting with your client, the time that you are making your mood board and researching brands you're going to pull from. All the things you're doing right now in these 4 steps is that prep day. And the shoot day is assuming that there's only one shoot day. You're going to account for that. If this is a shoot that is a week long, or that is 2 days long, then you add to the 3 days each shoot day. And then, of course, your returns. You're gonna have to complete some form of returns most likely, and so you wanna go ahead and account for that and make sure you are charging for the full thing. So that's the quick way to kind of calculate your stylist rate and some tips on negotiating it. But again, we can definitely talk one-on-one, and I will help you know what to charge for your styling services for your client. Just click the link below. And the 4th and final step is creating a brand or client-specific mood board. Some clients may give you some form of a mood board up front. It may just be, in my experience, it's usually just kind of pictures, just kind of paste it in, just saying, hey, this is the idea we're going for, generally speaking. But they're really looking for you to be able to really execute that. And so sometimes I have to translate that into my own visual words by creating my own mood board. So whether the client has asked me to make a mood board or not, I'm always going to make one for myself as a blueprint. And this helps me and my team, that being my assistant stylist, for us to be able to have something to focus on as we're shopping and researching. And this is a part of my research process. This is how I prepare to go out and pull. I never go into a store and just kind of wander around the store. I have to be very efficient because time is money. And so I want to make sure that I'm very clear about what I'm going into pull. And so this is where that mood board really comes in. If you're being asked to make a mood board, in this case, I do charge an a la carte service of the mood board creation. So sometimes I have a client that says, hey, like, can you make a mood board? I need guidance on, how we should really bring this shoot together. I really want to get your insight as to how you think it should be styled, things like that. So that's something that I usually charge up front. And then I will create the mood board, usually within depending on the time frame I have, a couple of days to a week. And then I will meet with my client, show them a mood board. And I usually give them about 4 different options and allowing them to choose up to 2 options depending on how many looks that they want or how many scenes they want. And we go from there. And that's how I know how to proceed. But you definitely want to create something that you can use for yourself. Regardless of whether the client is requesting one or not, you definitely want to have a mood board that you can use as your own roadmap. A part of the mood board is also researching brands, putting in specific items that you want to pull. This can, you can add wording to it. You can do lots of things with your mood board. I do also offer a mentorship service where I help you break down or help you create your own mood board for any sort of client. Even if it's a test shoot, I help with that as well. Whenever you make your internal mood board, and again, this is the mood board that you create for yourself and for your assistant stylist, your team, if your client has already given you some sort of imagery as the inspiration, your mood board should align directly to that. If they're doing all black and white, you shouldn't be having tons of colors in there. You want to make sure that you are still giving the client what they're looking for. Never, ever, ever go on your own story what you think it should be if your client hasn't approved of that, because they will probably never hire you again, and it will be a miserable experience for you on set if you've brought things that don't make sense for their brand, or you have basically just completely missed the mark as to what they were really looking for. Brave souls, that wraps our video for today. I hope you found this helpful. Comment down below with any questions that you have. I know all these topics can be a little confusing and there's lots of nuances for everyone's client. So leave questions for me down below, and also book your session and get 50% off of your first session with the promo code in the description box below. And make sure you click subscribe and ring the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new video airs. But until next time, you know what to do. Style well, live well, be brave. Peace.